All right, we have officially started the AM session of the Silver Bullet, and we've entered into the hour New York City 10 a.m. time zone, and we're still trying to figure out which way the market wants to go. We did take a macro trade right here based on this fair value gap on the 15-second chart, but the price is so choppy. We want it to go long, we want it to go short. It's going in both directions. It's very, very unreliable. Here was a break of the pivot, and it broke this pivot over here, and we saw that it created a breaker. Here's the pivot that it broke. It came over here and it created a breaker and a fair value gap. So we had to try to take that trade. When you see that price action at a certain swing level, you definitely want to at least try. And we took a 1-to-1 reward on it, and it failed after that. So here's the breaker that it created with a fair value gap right here. And when price came down over here, I jumped in the trade right here in this circle, got out 1-to-1, and it would have, it failed. So now we're trying to figure out on the hourly chart, which looks like price wants to go down. So we're trying to see if we can get into some shorts. I know that was a long that I just took, which, I only took it because of the breaker, and it was coming back over the swing, and it could have easily just kept going, creating a turtle trade. Right now, I'm looking for shorts, though, because I do believe the price is going to go down. Fair value gap right up here is the only thing I see on the 5-minute chart. So let's do fair value gap, 5-minute, all the way up here. And this is the only area on the 5-minute chart that I see a trade that I can go short on. So if price doesn't come up here, I don't have a short trade. I'm not sure if I trust the long after this. Just depends, because we still do have a breaker, and it violated that fair value gap on that breaker, but that we're using the 15-second chart only. Let's see if we get any more breakers. It could develop a double breaker here. We're still at that pivot level and it did make a higher low. So we got all the factor in all this information. If we get a temporary trade to the upside, we shouldn't be afraid to take it, even if we're longer biased to the downside. We trade in both directions, but when we take a trade that is temporary in direction against our longer term bias, we have to be careful with risk management, the size of our trade. Don't go too big. Be a tight stop loss when we're going counter trade to the the bias. Or we could just simply wait. Here's it's going up. Let's see what the 5-minute's doing here. I'm looking for it to come into this fair value gap up here. If I'm going to short, and that depends on what happens here on the 1-minute and 15-second. We can see more clearly here if we're going to get a fair value gap, and we did on the 15-second chart right here. So if price were to come back and test this, it looks like there's a chance. Well, it's trying to get up over the top of this. Sometimes momentum is going so quickly that we don't have an opportunity to get in it, and that's a bummer. We have to do a momentum trade, which is a little more risky. So it's coming back down. This is the 15-second chart we're using here. We can remove this box now. So the fair value gap on the 15-second chart is right here. It looks like it wants to do a breakout momentum trade over the top of that. Do I trust it? I don't know. There's a fair value gap up here for the short side. And there's another one right here for the short side. If these were to get ignored and violated and continue up, then we'd have more of a bias to the longer side. But there's a lot of resistance up there. And like I said, if it came into this area right here, it's possible we could try to go long on this spot right here. Let's see if it comes down a little further. It just barely touched it. Now it's going a little deeper. I want it to come down, to the bottom of that box. Oh, look at that. If I would have got in up here, I'd have been stopped out already. So my instincts are telling me to be super careful right now. Can't really use this as a fair value gap anymore, where I got in on this trade, because it's been violated. I'm just going to slide it over out of the way for my video for later for how I got in. But right now, did it go all the way up to the 5-minute? Nope, it hasn't gone up to the 5-minute fair value gap for my short yet, and it may not. So it did test this fair value gap right here for the short right here, though. That's a fair value gap for the 1 minute chart. Dang, I missed my trade for the short right here. I missed it. This is the perfect setup. When you get a double test, especially a higher high in the fair value gap area, where the candle made a higher high, but it still closed below, the next candle double tops, starts turning red. Perfect setup. You go short as it turns red, and your stop is above the pivot high. I love this setup. I gotta do a video on this. I gotta do a video on this trade setup because this happens a lot. This picture right here happens a lot. So, you know, I could have had 1-to-1 return on it, even if it's not going to keep going down. Once it turns red, we put our stop down here to break even. Or we start trailing, and I would have been down here, 1-to-1 return on it already, probably. Right there, probably would have got 1-to-1. It would have stopped me out right there because I would have trailed my stop. It's coming into a fair value gap to the downside right here, and it just tested it, and it's turning red. Checking the 5-minute chart. So this is what I mean by scalping, though, you know, because even though we had a decent little trade to the short right there, a 1-to-1 return, we had a 1-to-1 return on the upside. That would have been a 1-to-1 return on the downside. It's a choppy market. Just scalping quick profits, keeping the stop loss very, very tight is all we're doing in this silver bullet session here. So now it's back up over the top. It did create a higher low. It is making higher highs. All right, so that's something to keep in mind. We still have this breaker that was created at the pivot sweep, and the question is this a sign that it's making its way back up? Is it making its way back up? And if it is making its way back up, where's it going to? Because we have these highs on the 15-minute chart that it could try to sweep up to. On the 5-minute chart, there we have these highs up here that it could sweep up to. All right, everything's marked out where it could sweep up to. That's where it would be going. There's no other place for it to go. If we get a buy on the 15-second chart, we have our targets. In those areas, here is a fair value gap that it's testing and trying to push up over the top. It's very risky. I'm not sure if I trust anything right now. We are in the silver bullet moment. I'm just having a hard time trusting this price action. Here it's had some selling. You might want to try to sweep this, though. On the 1-minute chart, yeah, there's some liquidity there I didn't see. It's went over the top of it. There it goes over the top of that. If it closes over this, and it did, it's disrespecting that fair value gap, which is a good sign. It's a good sign. This is a 15-second chart, though, so the 5-minute chart, it's into that fair value gap that I was saying was a short, but it's going right through it. That's another reason why to be careful trying to buy this on the momentum trade. It could work. I like momentum trades, but you got to time it just right, and you got to get the right price. You got to get in at the right price, and your stop's got to be very, very managed. So we have fair value gaps going to the upside, 2 of them. If it pulls back to the 50% range, 1-minute chart here, we got a big, gigantic fair value gap here. We don't need this anymore. Don't need that anymore. Fair value gap to the upside on the 1-minute chart. So it's getting up into an area where it had that inverse fair value gap. Could be an inverse fair value gap. The problem with the silver bullet trade is not really knowing the direction that you think price is going to reliably go to. And taking a trade based on a fair value gap on a lower time chart without really knowing which way you think the price is going to go is a dangerous thing to do. Overall, I would say price is temporarily going to go up a little bit more because it's come down and swept that low already. It did create a breaker down at the bottom of that low where it's making higher highs and continuing to kind of push up. All right, so I would say even if it is going to go down in the bigger picture, that it's heading up right now in the smaller picture. So this is the drawn liquidity is up here at the top. All right, so if it is going to go up higher, that's where it's headed, I think. However, it's not in any particular area to fail yet, unless I just can't see it. 50% of that move down, it did retrace 50% already. This move down right here did retrace 50%. 1 minute chart. Yep. So if we put a Fibonacci on that, it's up to the 62% level. If it's going to reverse, that's a decent area to reverse. I would imagine it's going to use the liquidity void before it did that, or the liquidity imbalance. It never made it up there. That would have been a good place, a very good place for it to reverse and go down. Do we still think it's going to go up with these strong candles and this pattern development down here, the higher highs and higher lows, the breaker fair value gaps? It's definitely possible. And here's an opportunity. If it slams too quickly, look at that. It's too fast. I wanted to try to get in right here on this pivot. I can't trust that price action. Even though right here would be a good price time to try it. As fast as it goes, I just can't trust it. I'd want to buy right here though. Put my stop underneath that candle. And very tight stop loss. And break even as fast as possible. I'd be break even already on that trade had I gotten in. If price wasn't just moving like a madman. So yes, it came back into the fair value gap on the 1 minute chart. Right about 50% of that pull move up. So yeah, and like I said, even if it fails and goes lower, the idea of the scalp was still a decent idea here. So there was another entry right there that could have been done if I believed. I could have really used this entry here and this stop loss right here. Really tight, really tight, really tight. There's the FVG right here. FVG, fair value gap. See how it just is, this is so impulsive. It can move 4 points in a split second. It hit that fair value gap that I thought was a good short idea, went past it too far in a green strong candle. That's why this whole thing right here was looking so strong that the long opportunity looked pretty good just on this one little tiny quick scalp. But price was moving way too sporadically for me. If it's moving slower, I can get a grip on it and manage it better. Here's another trade opportunity to take that trade. Oh, see that? That's what I'm talking about. If I would have got in right here and put my stop right underneath, I would have stopped out as soon as I got in. Untrustworthy. So where did it go? It went down deeper into this same fair value gap. This whole square right here is from this big green candle right here being a fair value gap on the 1 minute chart. There's nothing on the 5, nothing on the 15. We don't have much on the 15-second chart, except it came down to this fair value gap, and that would have been an interesting. So that's a fair value gap on the 15-second chart. It actually respected that one too. It didn't close below it, but it certainly penetrated it. That's what I'm saying right here. I didn't want that to happen over here. That's why I was very careful, because I didn't want this to happen to me. You see, because this is what I thought was going to happen over here. That's why I was very careful not to get into this trade. We have quite a few fair value gaps down here though on the 15-second chart. It looks like it's just creating liquidity just so it can go sweep it. You know what I mean? It is making generated liquidity up here. Hasn't gotten that high yet, but it certainly is taking out the lower parts of it. But at the same time, it's making higher lows since it's come across the previous day's low pivot, making its way back up. This might have been a very interesting place to try that again, but like I said, the behavior of this price action right here is just intimidating me too much. But the idea, when it's moving a little bit more reasonable, a little bit slower, is to get in when there's two pivots and two pintails, using one pintail as your stop loss, the other pintail as your entry point, trying to get it as low as you can to match that. So the entry can be as low as possible with that previous low as your stop loss. I would say that's another missed opportunity right here. Can't really tell how good it looks though until you get to this time chart here. This makes it look a little bit more understandable because of the fair value gap that you can clearly see created right here, and how these pintails line up perfectly with it. So missed trade, but price is moving way too fast. So here it goes again. I think it's going to sweep past it. There it goes. It went right past it. And see, because it does that, and it's been doing that ever since the 10 o'clock news or 8:30 news, and it's going right into another fair value gap down here. But perhaps, these opportunity there, it goes way deep. My goodness, right there would have been an interesting try.
Order filled.
I'm going to try it. I'm going to put my stop right underneath. See if it goes up. Right underneath.
Stop filled.
Okay, it stopped me out. I wanted to give that a try right there. It came right to the bottom of that fair value gap. And see, if it didn't whip down one final time like that, I'd be in this trade still. I'd be green. Look at that. I would have broke even on this trade, because here it comes back down again. Yeah. So I probably wouldn't have made any money on it even if it didn't whip me out like that, because I would have put my stop on break even as fast as possible. I didn't even get a chance to do that. And to get back in it right now and just to kind of revenge trade is a temptation, and I'm overcoming that. I'm not gonna worry about that I lost and I'm gonna get you back and show you, and now let me try it again, and keep trying it over and over, because it may work. It may work, and that does look like a little bit of a breaker trade. Let's take a look at this here. That's what you want to see, and you want to see fair value gaps created right here. What does it look like on the 1 minute chart? Yeah. I mean, when it comes that far down below the fair value gap, which is what this box is right here, it didn't close below it, but this activity right here is mean, buddy. Mean. That's the 1 minute chart. I notice higher low, higher low, higher low, and even now, higher low. And there it goes, springing right back up. Now, to do what though? Probably lower high, lower high, lower high. Operating like this back and forth. 15-second chart, we see some fair value gaps created here. That. All right, just for the record, on the 15-second chart, after that sweep out at the bottom, it created a bunch of fair value gaps going up, and this one was respected. Okay, it's important to note that. The question is, will it create a high? Would it sweep over this? All this making lower and lower liquidities. It did. Each line is lower and lower than the one before. Okay. So it's interesting to observe that. Once it gets up there and does that, and it starts to head back down, these fair value gaps probably become useless now. Unless we get to, and there it goes. Okay. So let's just mark this entrance here. There it goes. It took them. These entrances right here on the 15-second chart are good trades, I think. But how can you trust it? So look at that. All those it took out. Okay, so if we would have gotten in right here, we would have been doing really good. Let's check the 15. Yep, on a 15-minute chart, all of them were taken out. All of them. Now the next ones are up here. It could just make a huge run up that high. Let's see what it looks like on the daily chart. I mean, you see this red candle day here we're talking about. It's red, but this whole thing could turn bullish and go right over the top of all these if it wanted to. Taking those out, it's got a fair value gap up here that it's testing. It's at the high part, and it's already swept that liquidity, so it's probably due for a pullback. Maybe, since it's already swept all that, I'd be surprised if it keeps going. I mean, not too surprised, but the next liquidity levels are pretty high up here. It's got to go up there to get the stops on that one. So is it happy with what it's done here at the bottom? It's creating all this generated sell side liquidity. Is it time for another pullback to do it again into the 76% range of this move here? I would say that's pretty likely the way it's been behaving right now. But can it just continue to go up? Yeah, it could. And that means the fair value gap right now at 23% is going to hold. And this is an area we should make an attempt to scalp right here in this area right here. But I just don't like how price is, it moves so quickly, and I guess I can't take it because of how it's moving today. That's the only fair value gap that I see worth taking as possible scalp right now. So it's consolidating. It could come down to this fair value. Is it going to Is it going to go down more? There it goes. See how it just, wow, that would have stopped me out if I tried that. That would have stopped me out again. Taking my time today is good. It already got me on the bottom down there. It was a pretty decent chance. It was at a great location, and it actually ended up working. I got to go back and study that though, and I'm pretty sure the reason was I got in before it actually broke. Maybe into anything we can really. Well, wait a minute. There's a fair value gap right here. It's huge. Wow, look at the price. Look at this. Unbelievable. That's the kind of day it is today, boy. Well, here's another fair value gap right here. I could, if I didn't treat this like real money, this demo account, and if I didn't treat it like real money, I'm not preparing myself for the real world. I've got to treat this like real money, have the same fear, have the same emotions. Okay, it's in that box now. This is possibly a time to try it. Oh gosh. There, see that the last few times I thought an area was good, it slammed down just like that. It slammed down just like that. I would have had 3 or 4 losses because of that price action right there. In an area that I thought was a reasonable trade. So here's 50% coming up. 50%, trying to reprice. See if it comes down a little more. I don't see much of anything on this 5-minute chart either. So all that's been taken out. Let's move these around a little bit. Price has been moved around. Take a chance and enter on the pintails and put the stop at the very bottom. And then just stay out of the way and let it chop around. Right? So down here, I guess if my stop loss was a lot lower, I would have been in this trade and learning to stay in it even in the chop. You could just hold and hold and hold. On the 5-minute chart, it's looking like it's doing pretty good. This pullback right here, though, on this probably could have stopped me out, because after going up that high, I would have wanted to retain some of that profit. I wouldn't have wanted to take a chance on getting stopped out for a loss. So here's a fair value gap. It's kind of teasing us on the 15-second chart. I can't trade on this chart. I had 1 winner and 1 loss. Probably break even for the day, and I'm not going to push it. Sometimes it respects the fair value gaps, and then it just crashes right down. Myself every single day, certain rules, certain good behaviors, certain adjustments that I need to make is really helping. And so if it's ever going to be a business, if it's ever going to pay the bills, this has got to be treated seriously and not like some video game. Got about 10 more minutes till the silver bullet session ends. All right, this is the end. I'm not going to continue trading. It's just sideways. It's almost at the end of the block here of the silver bullet AM session. And we're done. We'll be back in the PM session, 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Eastern to 3, New York City time zone, trading the afternoon session, silver bullet. See if it's any better. Hopefully price action will be a little bit smoother and we can take a better trade. All right, see you then.